You don't need cutting-edge graphics to have an amazing gaming experience. Sometimes, all it takes is great controls, clever level design, and gameplay that keeps you coming back for more. That's exactly why 2D platformers have remained popular for decades. From retro classics to modern gems, these games continue to deliver some of the most fun and memorable experiences you can play today. Here are 11 of the best 2D platformers you can play in 2026. QuackShot rode the massive wave of success left by Castle of Illusion, giving Donald Duck his very own starring vehicle on the Sega Genesis. Steering away from the standard rescue mission, Donald embarks on a globe-trotting treasure hunt heavily inspired by classic pulp adventure cinema. Traversing scorching deserts, dense jungles, crumbling ancient ruins, and high-tech corporate strongholds, he chases down legendary riches while dodging deadly traps, solving light puzzles, and dispatching colorful foes. Instead of standard weapons, Donald packs a quirky arsenal anchored by his trusty plunger gun. Upgrades and specialized ammunition unlock completely new ways to interact with the world. Standard plungers handle close-range threats, while others act as temporary wall ladders or grab onto passing ledges to hoist you up to secret areas. This clever mechanic shifts the focus toward rewarding exploration and backtracking, making the game world feel surprisingly vast. While Donald's momentum can occasionally feel a bit slippery during pixel-tight jumps, the controls remain responsive enough to keep the pacing smooth. Visually, QuackShot stands out as a masterclass in Disney animation. Donald's sprite is bursting with personality, perfectly capturing his iconic tantrums, stubborn frustration, and triumphant swagger. Vibrant backdrops and a catchy, adventurous soundtrack ensure every stage feels entirely distinct. Blending creative mechanics, light exploration, and timeless Disney charm, QuackShot proudly stands as one of the absolute finest 16-bit adaptations ever made and a crown jewel of the Genesis library. Imagine an 80s action movie turned into a fast, chaotic 2D shooter, complete with ridiculous villains, explosive weapons, and heroes who always seem to have a one-liner ready. That's essentially what Huntdown delivers, and it does it incredibly well. You play as one of 3 bounty hunters, each with their own weapons and personality, as they hunt down criminals across a futuristic city controlled by violent gangs. The basic formula is simple: move through short stages, eliminate enemies, grab their weapons, and eventually face the gang's lieutenant. But the combat becomes much more interesting thanks to the game's cover system. Running toward crates automatically lets your character duck behind them, while certain walls and doorways can also be used for protection. You can quickly pop out, fire a few shots, and duck back before enemies overwhelm you. It feels surprisingly natural and gives the shooting a tactical rhythm without slowing the action down. Weapon variety keeps things fresh too. Shotguns, rockets, sniper rifles, grenade launchers, Molotov cocktails, and other weapons can be picked up from defeated enemies. Since ammunition is limited, you have to decide when it's worth using your strongest weapons. Different gangs also bring their own enemies, weapons, environments, and personalities, while the boss fights constantly introduce new ideas. Some can be genuinely challenging, especially when they force you to rethink your approach. Visually, inspired aesthetic with gorgeous pixel art, neon-filled environments, exaggerated characters, and plenty of personality. The cheesy dialogue and energetic soundtrack complete the experience. Huntdown doesn't try to be complicated. It simply takes the best parts of classic run-and-gun games and 80s action movies, mixes them together, and delivers one of the most entertaining modern 2D shooters you can play. Imagine a Castlevania game where Dracula's resurrection is connected to World War I. That's the wonderfully strange setup behind Castlevania Bloodlines. According to the game's story, the witch Elizabeth Bartley orchestrates the assassination of Franz Ferdinand and uses the resulting chaos and deaths to bring Dracula back. It's an absolutely wild premise, but the game plays it completely straight. You can choose between 2 characters, and that choice changes how you approach the levels. John Morris uses the classic whip and can even swing from certain surfaces to cross gaps. Eric Lecard fights with a spear and has a powerful charged jump that can send him incredibly high into the air. John's whip feels more natural for combat, while Eric's mobility can make some sections much easier to navigate. The adventure takes you through 6 stages across Europe, with each location introducing new enemies, hazards, and memorable boss encounters. The World War I setting isn't used as much as you might expect, but the environments still have plenty of variety and personality. And technically, the game is one of the Genesis' most impressive Castlevania titles. Detailed sprites, smooth animation, large enemies, and creative visual effects push the hardware surprisingly hard. Some areas even use screen distortion effects that make the stages feel completely different from traditional Castlevania levels. The difficulty is also classic Castlevania, challenging but usually fair once you learn enemy patterns and understand how each character's abilities work. It may not be the most famous entry in the series, but Castlevania Bloodlines is a fascinating experiment that combines gothic horror, intense platforming, and one of the strangest stories the franchise has ever produced. If you grew up loving classic 16-bit platformers, Kaze and the Wild Masks feels like a modern game built around everything that made those games so addictive. It takes inspiration from games like Super Mario World and Sonic, but adds enough of its own ideas to stand apart. You play as Kaze, a rabbit who travels across the Crystal Islands to rescue her friend Hogo after a mysterious curse turns the island's vegetables into dangerous creatures. The story is simple, but the gameplay quickly becomes the main attraction. Kaze can jump, stomp enemies, perform a powerful dive attack, and glide through the air. The glide becomes especially useful for controlling longer jumps and reaching distant platforms, while different enemies require different approaches. The biggest feature is the Wild Masks. 4 masks give Kaze completely different abilities. The Tiger Mask improves her combat, the Eagle Mask allows her to fly, the Lizard Mask focuses on movement and climbing, while the Shark Mask gives her special abilities underwater. Entire sections are built around these transformations, making them feel like an important part of the level design rather than ordinary power-ups. Stages are packed with collectibles, hidden areas, moving platforms, hazards, and optional challenges. The difficulty also ramps up later, particularly in the bonus stages, but mastering the movement makes those sections incredibly satisfying. Visually, the game is one of its biggest strengths. Colorful pixel art, expressive animations, and detailed environments capture the charm of classic 16-bit platformers while giving everything a modern level of polish. Kaze and the Wild Masks proves that modern platformers can capture the spirit of the classics while still bringing enough personality and creativity to feel fresh. You wouldn't expect a game inspired by classic Castlevania to feature a corgi piloting a magical mech, but that's exactly what makes Bloodstained, Curse of the Moon 2 so much fun. It keeps the old-school action platforming formula intact while adding a few wonderfully ridiculous ideas of its own. You control a team of 4 characters, each designed for a different situation. Zangetsuis, the balanced fighter, while Dominic attacks from a distance, can jump higher and uses healing magic to keep the team alive. Robert specializes in ranged attacks and can snipe enemies from far away but needs to reload after firing. Then there's Hachi, the corgi in a mech who can walk across spikes and use temporary invincibility to survive dangerous sections. The ability to switch between characters at any moment is one of the game's best mechanics. But there's a catch. If a character dies, they're unavailable until the stage ends. That makes Dominic's healing ability especially valuable, because wasting it can leave your entire team without a reliable way to recover. The stages also take advantage of these different abilities. Certain secrets and alternate paths can only be reached with specific characters, encouraging you to experiment with your team and replay levels to discover everything. Across its episodes, the game introduces new challenges and boss encounters while maintaining its classic gothic atmosphere. The pixel art, animations, and environments feel like a modern recreation of the old Castlevania style. With challenging platforming, clever character switching, hidden routes, and one hilariously unexpected playable dog, Curse of the Moon 2 is a fantastic modern tribute to classic 2D action games. What happens when you take an old school ninja platformer and rebuild it with modern visuals and mechanics? You get Shadow of the Ninja Reborn, a stylish remake that brings the original's intense action into a completely new presentation. Set in a dystopian version of the United States in 2029, the game follows two ninjas sent on a mission to take down a powerful dictator. The story is classic action game stuff, but the real focus is on fast, challenging combat. You can switch between two characters, each equipped with a katana for close-range attacks and a kusarigama that gives you much greater reach. Both weapons can be upgraded during the stages, while different sub-weapons provide additional options when enemies start overwhelming you. The levels are filled with traps, projectiles, spike pits, and enemies attacking from almost every direction. Thankfully, stages are divided into smaller sections, so dying doesn't force you to replay everything from the beginning. There's also a pity system that gradually gives you more healing items if you keep struggling, making the difficulty demanding without becoming completely frustrating. The game also rewards replaying stages. Sub-weapons you discover can become available for future runs, letting you experiment with different loadouts and approaches. Visually, this remake is a huge upgrade. Detailed pixel-style characters, atmospheric environments, and impressive boss designs transform the original's 8-bit aesthetic into something much richer. And if you have someone to play with, the two-player co-op makes the experience even better. Shadow of the Ninja Reborn combines challenging old-school gameplay with modern presentation, making it a fantastic choice for anyone looking for a tough but rewarding 2D action platformer. Some platformers are remembered as classics, but Super Mario Bros. 3 feels like the game that showed everyone what the genre could really become. It took the basic formula of the original Mario and expanded it with more power-ups, bigger worlds, secrets, and far more freedom. Mario's new abilities are a huge part of that experience. The raccoon suit lets him glide and fly, the frog suit completely changes how he moves underwater, and the hammer suit gives him powerful projectiles and even lets him block certain attacks. There are also plenty of other items that can completely change how you approach a level. The overworld map was another major step forward. Instead of simply moving from one stage to the next, you can explore branching paths, discover Toad's houses, use items to open new routes, and even save warp whistles for later. That sense of choice makes the adventure feel much bigger than a straightforward platformer. The game is divided into 8 distinct worlds, each with its own theme and challenges. You'll travel through deserts, oceans, giant landscapes, icy regions, skies, and strange pipe-filled areas before eventually reaching Bowser's domain. The airship stages at the end of each world also provide some of the most memorable challenges in the game. And then there are the Koopalings, who give each world its own boss battle instead of making Bowser the only major threat. Despite being decades old, the controls still feel incredibly precise, the level design remains clever, and almost every stage introduces something new. Super Mario Bros. 3 isn't just an important NES game. It's one of the clearest examples of how creativity, variety, and excellent gameplay can make a 2D platformer timeless. Imagine a dark fairy tale where rats and frogs are locked in a brutal war, and you're playing a young rat prince trying to reclaim his destroyed kingdom. That's the setup for Tales of Iron, a hand-drawn action RPG that combines challenging combat with an incredibly atmospheric world. You play as Reggie, the heir to the Rat Throne. After the Frog Army attacks his kingdom and takes his family, Reggie is left with almost nothing. His journey is about rebuilding what was lost, gathering allies, and eventually taking the fight back to the frogs. The combat is clearly inspired by games like Dark Souls, but it isn't nearly as punishing. You can use swords and shields for faster attacks and defense, switch to heavier greatswords for more damage, or rely on a bow when you want to keep your distance. Dodging, blocking, and perfectly timed parries are all important, and there's no stamina bar constantly limiting your options. But don't expect it to make the game easy. Bosses have much more complicated patterns that still require careful observation and timing. There's also plenty of equipment and weapon variety, allowing you to experiment with different builds and combat styles throughout the adventure. But the real star is the presentation. Every environment looks like a beautifully illustrated storybook brought to life, with hand-drawn characters, atmospheric backgrounds, and an appropriately dark, fairy tale tone. The adventure isn't huge, and some side quests can become repetitive, but those are small drawbacks compared to what the game gets right. Tales of Iron delivers a beautiful world, satisfying combat, and a surprisingly emotional adventure that makes it one of the most distinctive 2D action RPGs you can play today. Some modern games don't try to reinvent classic genres, they simply take everything that worked and push it further. Iron Meat does exactly that, delivering a brutal run-and-gun experience that feels like a lost classic from the 16-bit era. You play as Vadim, a soldier fighting against the Meat, a terrifying alien substance that has escaped from a lunar facility and begun consuming everything in its path. Across 9 stages, you'll battle mutated creatures, biomechanical enemies, and some truly bizarre bosses. The visual style is easily one of the game's biggest strengths. Human structures are constantly mixed with grotesque alien biomass, creating environments that feel heavily inspired by classic body horror artwork while still having their own identity. Sharp pixel art, detailed backgrounds, and colorful effects make every stage stand out. The gameplay keeps things straightforward: run, jump, shoot, and survive. You can carry 2 weapons and switch between them instantly, while collecting duplicates upgrades their power. There's also a special aiming mode that lets you stay in place and fire in multiple directions, which becomes extremely useful when enemies start attacking from everywhere. The difficulty can get intense, but multiple difficulty levels let you decide how much punishment you're willing to take, and if you'd rather not face the Meat alone. The game also supports local co-op, making the chaos even more enjoyable. Then there's the soundtrack, which goes all in on heavy metal and perfectly matches the constant explosions, monsters, and frantic action happening on screen. With its gruesome pixel art, fast controls, creative bosses, and unapologetic old-school design, Iron Meat feels like a modern love letter to classic run-and-gun games, and one that's hard to put down. If you miss the days when action games were fast, brutal, and constantly throwing something at you, Blazing Chrome is practically designed for you. Developed by Brazilian studio Joy Masher, it's a modern tribute to the run-and-gun games of the late 80s and 90s, especially Contra, while borrowing ideas from other arcade classics. The basic formula is simple: run, jump, shoot, and survive. But the controls are incredibly responsive, with precise movement, double jumps, and the ability to lock your position while aiming in multiple directions. You can choose between 2 main characters, with additional ones becoming available as you progress. The game features 8 stages, and each one constantly changes the pace. Alongside traditional side-scrolling sections, you'll encounter vertical areas, vehicle sequences, sections that move toward the screen, and plenty of massive boss fights. There's very little downtime, so you're almost always dealing with enemies, traps, or incoming projectiles. The difficulty is where things get serious. Even normal mode can become extremely challenging, with enemies attacking from different directions and bosses requiring you to learn their patterns rather than simply relying on quick reactions. Unlimited continues help reduce the frustration, but you'll still need plenty of practice to make it through. The weapon selection is one area where the game could be better. Some weapons are useful in specific situations, but the standard gun is often reliable enough that switching doesn't always feel necessary. Still, the presentation is excellent. The detailed pixel art, explosive effects, mechanical enemies, and energetic soundtrack perfectly recreate that classic 16-bit action aesthetic. Blazing Chrome doesn't try to reinvent the run-and-gun genre. Instead, it focuses on delivering the kind of intense, challenging action that made those games unforgettable, and for fans of classic arcade shooters, that's exactly what makes it so enjoyable. And that wraps up our list of 11 best 2D platformers you can play in 2026. From modern indie gems to timeless classics, each of these games proves that great platforming never goes out of style. Which one is your favorite, and which game do you think deserves a spot on this list? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, Don't forget to like and subscribe for more gaming content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.